It had been 3 years since Robert's wife passed away. 3 years of routine. Same breakfast, same park bench, same quiet house that no longer echoed with laughter. The world outside his window had color. But his own life had turned grayscale. Every day he'd whisper, "I'm fine," and every night, he'd know he wasn't. He wasn't lonely because he had no one. He was lonely because the people he had forgotten how to see him. Robert's son called once a week. His daughter texted when she remembered. The neighbors smiled politely, but never stayed long. He had mastered the art of disappearing in plain sight, until one afternoon, a simple mistake changed everything. He had gone to check his mailbox. Among bills and advertisements, there was a handwritten envelope addressed to someone else. "Wrong address," he murmured. But the handwriting, it was shaky, fragile, like his own. He decided to walk a few blocks to deliver it himself. It had been months since he'd walked that far. That small decision, to return a stranger's letter, was the beginning of something bigger, something his old self had been waiting for. He arrived at a small house with peeling paint. An elderly woman opened the door, surprised. "Oh, you brought my letter. I must have dropped it," she said with a trembling smile. Her name was Elaine. She invited him in for tea. He hesitated then, for the first time in a long time, he said yes. The tea was lukewarm, but the conversation was warm. They spoke of gardens, weather, and memories that both had long buried. Two strangers, bonded by something as simple as time. When Robert left that day, Elaine said softly, "Come again, if you'd like." He didn't promise. But the next morning, he woke up earlier than usual and walked the same path again. It started with tea. Then books. Then laughter. Little by little, Robert began to return to the world he'd abandoned. He started fixing things around her house, watering plants, sharing stories. And, in the smallness of these moments, he rediscovered what loneliness had stolen. Purpose. Sometimes life doesn't need a miracle. It just needs movement. One morning, he sat on his old park bench, the same bench he once used to wait for his son. But this time, he wasn't waiting for anyone. He was simply present. The wind was softer. The laughter of children didn't sting anymore. He smiled at strangers, and some smiled back. He realized, you don't have to be seen by everyone to feel alive again. Sometimes one genuine connection can restart an entire life. He told Elaine once, "I thought my story was over." She smiled. "Maybe it's just a new chapter, Robert." We forget that life keeps offering pages even when we stop reading. Inspired, Robert started changing small things. He took down dusty curtains, repainted the walls, placed his wife's old photo on the mantel, not as a memory of loss, but as a celebration of love that once was. He invited his son over for dinner, not to complain, but to reconnect. When his son arrived, he noticed something different. The house felt alive. So did his father. They spoke for hours, not about the past, but about now. Respect isn't demanded. It's mirrored. And when Robert began respecting his own life again, others naturally followed. Weeks later, Robert and Elaine went to a community center just to look around. He ended up joining a small writing group for seniors. At first, his hands shook while holding the pen. But soon, words flowed. Memories, lessons, laughter. He wrote about pain. He wrote about silence. He wrote about waking up one day and realizing it wasn't too late. Healing doesn't arrive in grand gestures. It arrives in quiet moments, in conversations, walks, letters, and second chances. Robert didn't become a new person. He just remembered who he was before the loneliness took over. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, he stood by the window. Same view, different man, the world was still the same. But this time, he was part of it again. He looked at the photo of his wife and whispered, "I'm still here, love. And I'm finally living again." Old age isn't the end of the story. It's just the chapter where you finally learn to live for yourself.